Hi, BookTube, CMF 1267 or Connie. I just wanted to come in and talk a little bit about a book that I just finished. It is book number 26 on the year for me, and the book is called The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. It was my book of the month pick for the month of February. Today I think is March 4th, so I finished it yesterday. So I'm trying to keep up with reading my book of the month picks. I try to read them the month I get them, but this book, there was some sort of slowdown. The post office lost my book for about a week until I called and asked them to look into it, and then they got it to me. So I didn't get it until like the end of February. But anyway, so I think I had discussed this in like 2 videos ago where I was talking about how excited I was to read this because it had so many things in it that I really enjoy. So it had a Vietnam vet, so I'm a vet. I like to read about military people. It was a kind of a coming of age novel for our main protagonist, Lenny, and it takes place in the wilds of Alaska. 3 things that I felt really, really strongly about, thought that I would really enjoy it. And unfortunately, this book just did not cut it for me. And I've really been trying to figure out what was it about this book that I just really didn't like. I mean, the writing was good. The pacing was a little bit slow, I think. And again, I listened to the audiobook, and I'll tell you who that narrator was. The narrator was Julia Whalen, and she did a pretty good job. I didn't dislike her. I liked her voice. I think she did a good job of changing her voice, the timbre of her voice, whether she was doing a male talking or a female. And I've really been thinking about this because I finished it late last night, and it was one of those things where I was listening mostly to it in audio back and forth to work. And then yesterday I had wanted to finish it, which was Saturday, and I got up and my Playster is having problems with their servers, so I couldn't listen to the last like 80 pages or 90 pages that I had left in the book, and I had to sit down and actually read it. I think this book could have done well with some editing. I think that the 400 and some odd pages that it was 436 pages, probably could have trimmed that down to about 350 pages and it would have been a really, really good book. But I think that mostly for me, what I didn't like about this book was that I just did not care about the 2 main characters, the daughter Lenny and the mother Cora. And it's kind of something that I see in literary fiction a lot, or just fiction in general, writing in general, is that authors, and I don't know what it is, they make these characters, these female characters, and they want you to think this is a strong woman, these are strong women, but yet they have to make them weak and stupid in some way, and usually it's weak and stupid about a man and staying in a situation. And I just found the storyline to be a bit frustrating because I hated the decisions that these characters were making, in particular the mother. Also, what grated on my nerves is that she called Lenny baby girl. Baby girl. Well, let me tell you something, baby girl. Ugh, it just grated on my nerves after a while. But yeah, I think it was just, I don't want to go too much into the book and what it's about, but Cora's in a bad relationship. She's in and she stays there, and she puts her daughter through all of this, and she never put her daughter first, and it just drove me crazy. And there's a couple parts in the book where she would tell Lenny, well, you're walking on thin ice with your dad, your decisions, you have to realize that your decisions have consequences and not just for you. Why don't you think of me for once? And I'm thinking, lady, you've had this poor kid in a horrible relationship, in this horrible living situation for years. You've never put your daughter first. And I just want to smack her. So I think that in a lot of ways it was probably very true to life as far as, being in an abusive relationship and how a lot of women react to that. I don't particularly think that women who stay in abusive relationships are strong women. It takes a lot more to walk away from that relationship and put your kid first. So, yeah, so that got on my nerves. I think that's really mostly why I didn't like, it's not that I didn't like the book, because I actually did. I finished the whole book. I liked it. It just wasn't as good as I was hoping it would be. Um, but the other thing is that Alaska is actually, you could say it's a character in this book. She really goes into detail about how harsh it is to live in Alaska. And like, they didn't move to Anchorage or what's the other one? Fairchild, Alaska. They moved out to this peninsula where there was no electricity. They had to use an outhouse. They had to grow all their own food. They had to hunt for themselves. There was like a little store in town, but they were really living a subsistence lifestyle. And so one good thing that the author did was her descriptions of Alaska and how difficult it was going to be living in the dark. I lived in Iceland. Now we had electricity and everything, so it wasn't that difficult for me in Iceland. And when they say it's 24 hours of dark, it really isn't 24 hours of dark. You have like a window of about 3 hours a day where you get light that's about dusk. That's at the worst. You have about 3 hours of, say, dusk daylight. But anyway, she talks about how that affects an individual's psyche and emotional turmoil. If you have some sort of emotional turmoil, how that dark and cold and wind and the weather can just really affect that and make it worse. So. But the one annoying thing about that, I thought at one point in the story, she got a little bit condescending about, living in Alaska and kind of like talking about people in Seattle and how they, go to the store and buy their prepackaged steaks and put them on their barbecue. Why don't these people just want to go out and hunt their own food? And it's like, okay, whatever. So I kind of felt there was a little bit of hero worship for the state of Alaska at some point. At points of the book, but other than that, it was, a readable book. I just didn't like the characters or their choices. So yeah, so that's it. The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna, and I looked up the narrator. Yeah, the narrator was Julia Whalen, and she did a pretty good job. I liked listening to narration, so yeah, I gave it 3 stars. It just, like I said, the story just didn't go the way I wanted. They didn't make the decisions that I wanted them to make. Yeah, there was like a turnaround in there that's kind of good, but, so, 3 stars. Alright, bye. Talk to you later.